honor, and the inventor of PowerShell, and I'll let him introduce himself, what else he does, and we'll talk about PowerShell and the new version that just came out last week.
Great, howdy, I'm Jeffrey Snover. It's great to be here again. I always enjoy this this user group. It's a great turnout, always great conversations. So I'm a Microsoft Technical Fellow. Microsoft Technical Fellow is sort of the top of the individual contributor track at Microsoft. We've got about 11 individual contributor technical fellows. We got about 30 overall, but a bunch of those are vice presidents, really, people with 1,000 people on them working for them. We only have 11 that are individual contributors, so yay. I'm currently, as of March the 1st, the architect for the Office 365 Intelligent Substrate. So the Intelligent Substrate, what the heck is that? Well, I'll talk about that towards the end. We'll go into that about my new role. Prior to this, I was the chief architect for Azure Storage and Cloud Edge, where I primarily focused in on Azure Stack. That's taking Azure and allowing you to run it on integrated systems in your data centers. And before that, I was the chief architect for Windows Server and our management products, System Center and OMS, Operations Management Systems. And then before that, most people know me for having invented PowerShell. And I continued to be involved in PowerShell, but throughout that time involved in PowerShell, but to more director level things as opposed to hands-on code or hands-on design. So we'll go into that. So today I'm going to talk to you about PowerShell 6.2. The future of PowerShell has never been brighter. I'll make the case for that. I'm really quite optimistic about it. So I'm going to talk about this idea of investing ahead of conventional wisdom, what that is and how it applies to PowerShell. I'll talk about some of the details of PowerShell Core version 6.2. Do a demo of the experimental features feature. Take a look back at what it is we've been trying to achieve with this PowerShell Core. Talk about PowerShell 6.3, support lifecycle, Windows PowerShell, and call to action, and then my new role. Now, just so I understand, how many people are using Core PowerShell, PowerShell Core? Okay, and how many people are using Windows PowerShell? Right, and then how many people are using PowerShell on Linux? Okay, great. So this is perfect composition. That's what I was hoping. Okay, so investing ahead of conventional wisdom. So when I became a technical fellow, I officially became an executive at Microsoft. And so Satya has a meeting where he brings all executives together on a regular basis, and then here's what we're doing, etc. And as part of that, he welcomes the new executives. And the meeting that I got introduced and welcomed, he went on this conversation. And that conversation then was just amazing. It was an amazing moment of clarity where he articulated his vision for how he wanted everybody to work together and his philosophy of business and progress. And then that portions of that talk got put into the book, Hitting Refresh. So his talk basically went something like this. Welcome to the room. In this room, we manufacture success. So congratulations, your days of whining are over. As a Microsoft executive, you need to manufacture success. And it's no good coming to me saying, oh, I'd be successful if only I had 300 more heads or 1,000 more heads. We have done our planning process, and we have allocated to each of your areas the resources we want you to manufacture success in. So you can only control two things. Number one is your culture, and number two is your resource assignment. And what you need to do to manufacture success, because we are not in a steady state business, we are in a growth business. We expect you to generate and manufacture growth with the resources we've given you. So you got to set the right tone and culture with your people, and you need to invest your resources ahead of conventional wisdom. You need to make decisions that other people will look at and say, really? And you've got to be right. He says, and I want to be clear on this one point. When you do that, you will get it wrong. You will get it wrong sometimes. He says, but I will back you if you are intellectually honest. What is intellectually honest? Intellectually honest means, one, you have a plausible theory of success, that you monitor that theory of success, and when it is no longer plausible, you're producing a new theory and making changes accordingly. If you do that and are intellectually honest, you will be forward-leaning in your business, you will make mistakes, and then you will self-correct, and I will back you. So just a stunning moment of clarity. And I encourage everyone to take that thinking and use it in your own business. It's really just generic and fantastic mindset. But this idea of investing ahead of conventional wisdom really kind of stuck with me. And in fact, the reality is that that's what PowerShell has always done and continues to do. And I will also tell you that also gave me the courage to be bolder in a number of the initiatives that I was undertaking at the time, in particular around Azure Stack. So, investing ahead of conventional wisdom. In reality, PowerShell, Windows PowerShell itself was that, right? Windows PowerShell invested ahead of conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom at Microsoft at the time said, if I can take any problem and turn it into a GUI problem, we win. Because everybody else sucks at GUIs and we're great at GUIs, so I don't know what your problem is, but if I can turn it into a GUI problem, I win. And so when it came to taking a desktop operating system, Windows, and turning it into a server operating system, I mean, I don't know if anybody around during those time period, but it was the laughing stock of the industry. Like, are you out of your freaking mind? Windows on a server? Is there something about blue screen of death that confuses you? You want me to run the blue screen of death? You want me to run my business on that? You are insane. Okay, so therein itself, was kind of a leap of faith. But, we knew we were going to invest for the long term. We got hired Dave Cutler, who was fixing up the kernel, right? Eventually made the common kernel across Windows and server, and got much more stable after that. But we were doing that, becoming a server operating system, and the mindset was, we will then win by making this about a GUI. Okay? We're going to win. Unlike the other server operating systems, this is a server you can walk up to and use the same skills that you've learned on a PC and apply it to a server and manage it. And in doing so, you can dramatically lower the skill set required to manage an operating system from way up here to way down here. You can click next, 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 and have something that runs. And indeed, that was the winning value proposition. Hugely successful, just wildly successful. If you think about it, in fact, Linux and Windows NT, Windows Server, came out around the same time. And what was the difference? So some people will say, well, the reason why Windows Server was successful was the x86 advantage, right? All the other Linux operating, Unix operating systems were tied to some proprietary processor, MIPS or SCIPS, Spark or Alpha's chips. That Microsoft won because of its economics, because its server operating system could run on the x86. No, my friends. No. Linux was available running on the x86 at the same time. Linux was consistent with Unix, the predominant model for server operating systems, and it was consistent, required no new changes. Windows was the newcomer, changed the rules, etc., and made it about the GUI. And until recently, and I forget when I do not know what the numbers are today, but as of about 4 years ago when I was the lead architect for Windows Server, sort of 20 years after both of them were in the marketplace, Windows, for each of those 20 years, consistently beat the pants off Linux. Full stop, unambiguously. And 4 years ago, about 70% of all CPUs that shipped from Intel ended up with Windows on them. Now I don't think that's quite the case. Linux has been coming on quite strong. But it just goes to prove the dominance of this thought that, hey, if we can make it about the GUI, we can win. And along comes this guy who says, hey, we got to not do a GUI. We need to have a command line interface, just like those Unix guys. Well, you can imagine how that was treated, right? That was not conventional wisdom. And if you've heard my story about getting PowerShell out, there was a lot of pain associated with it. In fact, I ended up taking a promotion to work on PowerShell. And it took me 5 years to get my position back. Anyway, but it was the right thing to do, because what they had not seen and what I had seen was what success looked like. Often you want to stop and you say, hey, what am I doing? And what does success out here look like? Because when you say, hey, we're successful, you're using my server, like, okay, that's one version of success. Another is, hey, you're using my servers, plural. You're not using a server, you're using 10 servers. You're using 100, you're using 1,000, you're using 100,000. Like, oh, well, actually, you buying one, that's success. You buying 100,000, that's a lot more success. I like that story. And so you want to think through what great success looks like, and then figure out if what you're doing actually supports that. So the degree to which you say, hey, success is you buy a server, and you walking up to that server, click, 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 happy days. It's great strategy. But you, with 100,000 servers, walking up to each one of those, click, 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 it's clearly never going to work. Clearly never going to work. And so I had to break conventional wisdom and say, hey, in that world, success is going to require automation, so you can repeat things, lights out operations, etc. So we were always investing ahead of conventional wisdom. And then we did PowerShell Core. And once again, this is investing ahead of conventional wisdom. .NET is great, it's awesome, and it's large. It's sort of that traditional monolithic Microsoft design, 1990s design. Put everything into one big bucket, one big clot. You're going to like it because it's great, and you never have to worry about pulling stuff in because it's all there. But it's big. Okay? And what they said was, hey, that's not quite what we need. We need to have something that can run in light, lean environments, because when you buy one machine and it's a little bit of slop, like, okay, it's a little bit of slop. But when you buy 100,000 machines and you got slop times 100,000, that's a big number. So you need to be leaner. So they went and said, we're going to refactor .NET so that we can be lean and mean. And while we do that, we're going to make it open source, and we're going to run it on Linux. So this is the beginning of the new company. They led the way. Okay? We were right there with them. And we said, hey, we're going to go with PowerShell. I was the lead architect at Windows at the time, Windows Server at the time. I said, hey, we're going to follow that path, and we're going to have this new version of Windows Server called Nano Server, right? Very small, very light. .NET's going to run it, .NET Core is going to run it, PowerShell's going to run it. And again, these things were ahead of conventional wisdom. People thought, what are you talking about? That's insane, etc. Won those battles. Sometimes they zig, sometimes they zag, sometimes they say, oh, we got to do Nano Server, and therefore we're doing Nano Server, and therefore we have to do PowerShell Core, and sometimes they say, oh, we're doing PowerShell Core, therefore we have to use Nano Server. Anyway, we got those things out the door. And a lot of customers looked at this and said, what the heck? Why'd you do that? Like, I have no Linux problem, and this thing does less than Windows PowerShell. So you're going backwards. So once again, we invested ahead of conventional wisdom. Well, we knew that this was the right path to go down. We knew that ultimately that any individual and any individual project or any individual customer may be homogeneous Windows only, but that the marketplace was heterogeneous, and that there would be more and more environments where you would benefit from saying, yes, I've got Windows, but I can also take advantage of Linux. Now, what we have in our mindset, the Windows PowerShell mindset has something we call the sacred vow. Okay? The sacred vow was this, and we treat it as a sacred vow. I said, hey, as admins, your hair's on fire. I know that. And I know the last thing in the world you want to do is to learn another language. And I'm here before you asking you to stop doing what you're doing and invest to learn another language, Windows PowerShell. And our sacred vow to you is, if you do that, we will do everything in our power to make that one of the best investments you've ever made. And as new problems come out, we're not going to produce introduce new things, we're going to reuse the syntax, we're going to expand it, we're going to make it, use it over and over and over again. And so consistent with that sacred vow, when we looked at it, we said, hey, the world's going to be, heterogeneous is going to be important. And having a person that can manage both Windows and Linux becomes more valuable than somebody who can only manage Windows or somebody that can only manage Linux. Said, this is consistent, we're going to help them. And so that's what we did. And that was the basis for this. So we refactored .NET, an interesting story there. .NET Core, version 1, they were too courageous. Too courageous. They overly refactored .NET. Anybody ever try to use .NET Core version 1? Did you ship anything with it? No one did. No one except 2 people. One, some great game developer in London who wrote everything from scratch and used open source to add the things that it didn't have. And then 2, the PowerShell team. And they came to me and they're like, Jeffrey, this is a pig. Oh my God, they overly factored, they don't have this. I said, fine, you write it. What? We're busy. You write it. You do it. You do it. And I just beat them into it. And they did hard work. And they were successful in getting PowerShell running on .NET version 2. Again, those are the only 2 instances of people I know that were successful with .NET Core version 1. .NET Core version 2, they added all the important things back, and people have been much more successful with that. Much more successful. Anyway, so we did Linux, we did open source, and we did Linux. Ported to Linux, made it open source, allowed the community to contribute. At the time, there was this thing called AZCLI. So here's where we were, in some regards, ahead of the power curve, and in some instances, behind the power curve. So basically, Guthrie cottoned on that, hey, I'm looking at my Azure numbers, and I'm saying, hey, this is great. And I go and I say, you're a big Linux user. How come you're not giving me your Linux business? And you say, well, I give you my Windows business, but I'm using my Linux business with these other guys. Well, why? He said, well, your Linux support sucks. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to fix that problem now. And they looked at us, and we were there struggling. We have great PowerShell support in Azure, as you know. And we're sitting there struggling, trying to get PowerShell running on .NET Core version 1. And we're like, yeah, we'll have something in the year or a little bit longer. It's like, yeah, we're not waiting. And so that's where they started the AZCLI effort. And honestly, Guthrie, I attended these meetings. He program managed that thing himself. It's like, oh, let's have the syntax do this. No, do this. And so he just managed that to say, hey, Linux users, if you're a Linux user, Azure is your best environment. And we're going to give you great tools to do it. Now, people read into this, oh, PowerShell's dead, AZCLI is the thing. That's not the thing at all. It is really just a case of he had an urgent business problem, like, hey, we need to have Linux support ASAP, or we're going to die on this hill, and we need great CLI support, so we're going to go do this. Now, in some cases, PowerShell is ahead, in other cases, AZCLI is ahead, and that's a mess, and we know that. And we're step by step getting those in sync. You see the new PowerShell review, look, new PowerShell commandlets. We went from Azure RN to AZ. We're cleaning up the namespace. We're adding better tab completion. We have a new auto generator. And again, time over time, the instance and the commitment is that we will, every time a new piece of functionality comes out, it will be equally supported with AZCLI and with PowerShell. And we're not there yet, but we will be there. Because we're not trying to say, Windows is my old girlfriend, my new girlfriend is Linux. That's not it. It's, hey, we are going to make you successful, however you want to be successful. If you want to be Linux, that's fine. If you want to be Windows, that's fine. If you want to use AZCLI and Bash, or you want to use PowerShell, that's fine. We're going to make you successful. It is not picking sides. Now, the execution is lumpy, but that's where we're going to get. So. There you go. Oh, so again, my point was that we have gotten a little bit of grief from some customers who was like, what are you doing with this PowerShell Core thing? It's less, and I don't care about Linux, so why are you doing it? And again, it's about the sacred vow. And it's taken a while for people to get it, and it might take others still a little bit more time as to why we've done this. But you'll begin to see the picture. It starts to add up. So, PowerShell Core version 6.2, we just GA'd that a couple days ago. This is primarily an engineering system release. Yeah, where we're working, you're sharpening the tools. So what we did was we support a very large set of platforms, and the engineering system required to turn the crank. We got a lot of things that we were doing by hand. The number of days it took us to release something was very large and manual, so it wasn't consistent. So basically we said, hey, on the 6.2 release, we're in pretty great shape. 6.2, we're going to kind of step back, sharpen the tools, work our engineering system. Now we also then made a number of additional things for bug fixes, stability, increased security. We had a security gap there. Security gap, let me be precise. PowerShell Core. So I don't know if you ever used Device Guard. Does anybody use Device Guard? Okay, so it doesn't matter. But if you use Device Guard and Azure Stack uses Device Guard, if you ever want to see how to do great Windows-based system design for security, drill into the details of Azure Stack. It is truly phenomenal. In it, we have Device Guard, which basically says the only things that can run are whitelisted things. Windows PowerShell will detect when it's installed on a system that is Device Guard enabled, and it will automatically lock itself to constrained language only. If you run in full language mode, you can execute code in memory and bypass some of the safeguards that Device Guard gives you. So it detects that and auto locks it. PowerShell Core did not do that, so we fixed that. But you don't care about that because nobody's using it, but it should. We've been automating, so as I say, we've been spending a lot of time on the engineering system, automating our build, test, release cycle. We moved all the continuous integration and release testing to Azure DevOps tool, which I don't know if you've used that. They've really, a couple years ago, I would have said, yeah, we got an offering, check it out. Today, I can say Azure DevOps, pretty darn good stuff, really. So if you've not checked that out, it's really worth checking out. Especially if you're new to DevOps, it's really quite awesome. You go to the Azure portal and you say new DevOps project, and like in 5 minutes, you can say, oh, well, Linux or Windows, again, whenever you want to be successful. You want to use .NET, you want to use Node.js, you want to use this, you want that, this, click, and within 5 minutes, we set up this CI/CD pipeline for you, including some mock code, that then you can then go say, oh, hello world, oh, I see how this works. Well, actually, we need a phase in here. You just go edit and add the phase. And okay, now I don't want a hello world app. I want my app. You just go place it, and then it's flowing through the pipeline. So instead of the CI/CD, a blank page of paper, CI/CD pipeline. How do I start? It's really quite wonderful. Anyway, so we moved we had to develop the CI/CD pipeline using other technologies, and we converted that all to Azure DevOps. And then we added this experimental feature. The goal for the experimental feature is this, or the thinking behind it is this. You got to understand the mindset of Windows development. And I think it's really hard to get in focus. And we do some pretty strange things. So let me give you an example of something that when I came to the company, I thought they were just insane. Okay? And that is when Windows does a beta, we all do betas, right? So you know what a beta is, right? You beta, I give it to you, you file a bug, I fix a bug, and then I give it back to you. Windows, that's not the deal. It's not about fixing bugs. What do you mean it's not about fixing bugs? Well, look, if 10 of you file bugs and I fix 10 bugs, I'm going to introduce 1 or 2 more. So we don't do that. What we do is we find the 10 bugs so we know where the problems are. If any of them cause data loss or system instability, we'll take the risk there. But other than that, what we're trying to do is we're trying to quantify the risk and not reduce it. And so that when problems come up, we know exactly what that is, etc. And I thought, you're crazy. That's insane. Like, okay, you fix 10, you introduce 2, you're still 6 up. Yay. Well, you don't know the 2. And one of those 2 might cause instability or data corruption. So it was like, okay, well, I can sort of see that. So that was the mindset. So here's what's really going on. Again, you might look at that and say, that's crazy, but it's not. Here's what's really going on. It's like physics. Okay? Physics. You're going to build a bridge, what do you use? F equals ma, Newtonian physics. You're trying to understand particle physics or astronomy, you don't use Newtonian physics. You use quantum mechanics. Okay? Physics is different according to whether the scale of the problem. So too, software engineering is different depending upon the scale of the problem. If you're successful and you ship your code to, 10 million people, whatever, 10 million people, you probably think that's pretty successful, right? You wrote a piece of code to 10 million people. I'll tell you, when you write a piece of code and it goes to 1 billion people, the physics are different. The logic is completely different. So when you see some of the things in Windows that seem a little bit strange, understand they're operating against a completely different set of physics. By the way, also, physics that's going to go to 1 billion people, and then it's going to be used unchanged. How many of you know people that haven't patched their system or updated? They're still running XP, right? And go to the airport and you see these NT systems. Oh my God. So this code's going to run maybe 15 or 20 years unchanged. So the physics are completely different. So what does that mean? That means I remember starting Windows PowerShell and working with the team, and there was this moment. We're recording this. Untold story. Working with the team, Windows developers, and they're like talking about this, and I finally went up to the development manager. I said, listen, one or two things are going to happen in the next 3 weeks. One, you're going to get those people to stop talking and get their goddamn hands on the keyboard and write some code. Or two, I want you to fire all of them and I will write it entirely myself. But I got to know within the next 3 weeks which it is. So you decide. So she got to write code. And what was going on, again, back to this physics, and why are people doing these strange things? And they had in their head like, hey, let's be clear. I'm not going to write a single line of code that unless I'm convinced that I will not need to change it for the next 15 years. Well, that part's pretty crazy. Anyway, so it led to very conservative mindset. A very, very, very conservative mindset. And so, as we explore, hey, features, what about this or what about that? The bar to put that feature in is very, very high. Well, part of the problem is, well, sometimes you don't know whether it's a good feature until you try it out. So how do you do that? And so what we've done is basically just held a super high bar in all the features that we ship. We had pretty good confidence. By the way, we didn't always get that right, but that was the bar for putting something in. Now with this experimental feature, what we're able to do is to ship new code behind a feature flag to say, hey, this thing is there. If you want to try it out, you can enable it, check the tires, it's not supported, you got a problem, you tell us, you got to call up CSS and say my production system is down because of this feature. No, no, no. You call us, and we'll work with you, and tell us whether it's right or wrong, you want to change it, etc. And so that's what the experimental feature is. So let me show you the experimental feature. Can you read that in the back? Yeah, great. First things first. Okay, yeah. Experimental feature. Oh, I've got them all turned on. Well, feature. Okay. Now notice when you enable or disable something, it doesn't take effect until you start again. Start again. Experimental feature. Table name. Description. Okay, so there are 4 experimental features available right now. Okay, these are PS command not found suggestion, PS implicit remoting batching, PS temp drive, and PS use abbreviation expansion. Okay, and we're not sure whether these are good ideas or bad ideas. So try them out, see if you like them. So look at here. Let's say I say get command. Okay, let's go back here. Thanks. Still enabled. Okay. So here, what this is doing is this. I'm not sure why I didn't turn it on before. But when I mistype something, just as in Linux, some of the shells in Linux, it says, hey, here are some suggested things. Basically, we do cosine similarity of the token you type against the known good tokens. Okay, so it's, oh, here's this, and it's actually cosine and then we have the similarity. But anyway, so you say, okay, actually, get command was one of mine. Let's see. So then temp drive is get PS drive. Notice this temp drive, CD temp. So this is I think it's that temp drive. It's here. So basically, we take your .NET function, say get temp directory, and map that and mount it as a temporary drive. And then the one that I like a lot is this PSU's abbreviation expansion. Now I like this, but it doesn't quite work the way I want it to. So let's do this. Okay, and get AZ something. Okay, so look at these things. Good Lord, what the heck is that thing? Right? And anybody remember that? Right? Can you type that out? You're going to be able to type that out. So what you can do here is type G dash. And by the way, you basically type the names of all the capitalized terms in the name. So get Azure Virtual Network Gateway Connection Shared Key. Got that? Tab. Is that awesome? Now, it doesn't support wildcards, and so I think there's some improvements here. And indeed, kind of remembering those things can be a bit of a challenge. But the alternative is just get AZ Virtual Net something, what the heck, and then tab. Whereas if you can kind of, we always wanted a world in PowerShell where you think about what you want and you type it, right? So what do I want? I want to do get AZ Virtual Network Gateway Connection Shared Key. Tab. So again, experimental feature. And again, now StackPop, this is a feature that we added so that the PowerShell team can now deliver experimental things that we're not sure about, things that we want to get feedback in production code in a way that you can give us feedback and say, yeah, not quite right, good, not good, etc. Okay. So this is in try those features and let us know. Good, not good. Experimental features. So now we step back and talk about Core 6.0, what our goals were. Really had three goals. One is we wanted to be ubiquitous, right? We wanted to say, wherever you go, PowerShell will support you in getting your job done. And again, the hypothesis is an admin that supports Windows, an admin that supports Linux, and an admin that can support Windows or Linux. Third guy is more valuable than the first two, right? Why? Because the answer is, what's my problem? And where's my estate today? Like, oh, okay, hey, this mix is great, but next year I'm going to have twice as much Linux, or I'm going to have twice as much Windows. Do I have to fire people and retrain people and hire people? Or do I have to say, oh, I got my Linux team and my Windows team, and some guy's out and the other guy can't support them? No. If you have versatility, you are far more valuable. Okay, so we want to support you. Number two is we want to be cloud ready. What did I say? What's that all about? remember I made kind of a side remark about a classic Microsoft 1980s design, like the big cloud, put it all in there. That's not the Cloud Design Center. Cloud has a different gestalt to it, different gestalt would be a good term for it. And so we want to be cloud ready. And we want to be very community focused. So let's see how we've done. Ubiquity. We now ship on all platforms, right? From Windows, we go down level to Windows 7 and 2008 R2. So I'll be clear, this is all supported. Honestly, it's quite hard, but I will say we ship on all supported platforms. You can ship on any version you want to. It's really hard for us to go and support something that's different than what the corporation's supporting. But the source code's there, and you can take that and run it down level if you want to. Okay, but again, you can't call us for support when that happens. Runs on Mac OS 10.12 plus, and look at these Linuxes. Right? I didn't even know about some. Arch, Kali, and never heard of Alpine.
Really? Default on Docker.
Oh, that's gotcha.
Gotcha.
And in fact, there's more than this because I know we support Photon as well. So I think these are the ones we support, and then the community supports additional ones. Okay, so it's on a lot of Linux. Oh, here you go. And on architectures, right? ARM32, 64, Raspberry Pi, Raspbian Linux runs on Raspberry Pis. On lots of packaging formats. Okay, runs on containers, Snap packages, .NET Global Tool. We try to make it as easy as possible for you to go and get this tool wherever you are. On the Ubuntu, latest Ubuntu OS, I think you just say apt-get PowerShell. Boom, it's there. Okay. So again, trying to get easy for the tool and the most recent version of the tool to be available to you anywhere at very low cost, very low effort. And again, it's portable. At the end of the day, all you need to do is Xcopy. You do not need to be admin to install this. Okay, so you can have lots of different copies. You can have an old copy and a new copy. You can pick which one you want. It's Xcopy deployment. The success of this has been really nothing short of outstanding. I mean, we were literally gobsmacked when we saw how people were using it. You know, we knew that we needed this for the next. But honestly, my joke was I had no illusions that the Linux community would greet us as liberators. Like, oh, thank God, Microsoft's here to save us. I've been doomed with this horrible Bash and K shell and C shell for years. Thank God, Microsoft here. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen at all. And yet, look at this. I mean, the bulk of this plots instance activations, right? So we gather telemetry, we're totally open and transparent. Use the telemetry we gather so there's trust, right? We want to have trust in the community so that we know exactly what we're looking at. As a result of that, we also don't gather any personally identifiable information. So we don't know how many people are using this, how many unique individuals, etc. Right? So I don't have a particularly crisp, clear notion of how it's being used, but I do know that these are the activation, and this big thick swath, that's the Linux activations. These are the Windows activations. So again, that sort of stunned us. By the way, here on this link is our Power BI dashboard for all of our metrics. And you can go grab this, look at it. You want to remember that URL? There's some AKSMS, but I can never remember it. Anyway, so here, and I don't know if you saw that chart. So that chart ended. Okay, so here's the latest instance. So it went from there up to here. And this is Linux and Windows. So again, the acceleration just keeps growing. These are daily activations. So we have 9 different reports here. These are top contributors in the last 30 days, top
Microsoft contributors. This is an interesting one. This is who's doing what, Microsoft versus the community. And so what you see here is that, it's, for most things, like for the pull request created, the community is actually changing PowerShell more than Microsoft is. Okay, issues created, communities file more logs, etc. And you could argue that Microsoft does fewer and larger commits. In some cases that's true, in other cases that's not true. I will also tell you that one of the reasons why, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but one of the reasons why we're a little bit behind is supporting open source is a huge tax. It is a huge tax. If you ever want to do open source something, one is publish and forget, and the other is publish and nourish, right? Publish and nourish, publish and forget. Basically, it's out there, best of luck. Here's a rabbit's foot, you're going to need it. If you have a problem, talk to the hand, right? Publish and nourish basically says, hey, we're going to establish this as a community. When someone submits a proposal or a comment, etc., we spend time looking at it. We say, oh, hey, you know what? That's great, but here's how we do the coding practice, or here's the right way to do it in this model, etc. And so we're coaching people about their stuff, how to do things to the coding standards of Windows, really. Because guess what? The code's going in Windows. But then think about that. Wait a second. All of a sudden, you can write some code, and it can go in Windows, and then ship to 1 billion people. Yeah. You can write some code, do a pull request, and it's going to end up in Windows going to 1 billion people. Anybody ship software to 1 billion people before? I'm telling you, that's freaking cool. And even if, I just encourage you to do it. Even if you go in there and you change a spelling request, and your spelling request is going to go, that spelling fix is going to go to 1 billion people. Take a crappy error message. You won't have a hard time finding a crappy error message. Improve the error message. We'll accept that. We love that stuff. It doesn't have to be, oh, I turned an NP complete problem into a P complete problem in 4 lines of code. Look at me. No. Hey, that error message was crap. If it said this, that would be useful. Thank you. And I'll ship it to 1 billion people. Man, anyway, the feeling of having your work go to 1 billion people, there's nothing like it. So I encourage you to do that. Okay? We don't know. Honestly, we don't know. So we've got a couple hypotheses. The big one right now is we believe that it's being used in a lot of CI/CD pipelines. And in the CI/CD pipeline, the frequency is very, very high. So we think that's it. We also, there's some other things I've talked to about that. I'll say, I think this is one of the reasons. Anyway, so all of our telemetry is up there. Kick the tires, take a look. We are trying to figure out ways that we can get better telemetry, and so we're having an open conversation with the community about, hey, how would you feel if we added this? How would you feel if we added that? Right? We want to get as much information as possible, so we know, hey, this is what's really going on. Therefore, we should invest here, or we should change there, but never break our trust with you. Right? I want to be super, super clear on this. Microsoft, you are not our product. You are not a product. Other guys, you are their product. They sell you. They sell your information. That's how they make money. That's not our business. We don't do that. And we're hardcore about that. We treat your privacy with the utmost respect. So we want to be transparent about that. Still, at the same time, in order to make good decisions, you're flying blind. Basically, with Windows, we just flew blind for years and years and years. Had no idea how people use things. So you're never sure, hey, is this good and I should do more, or this was not used, I need to fix it so people can use it, or it's just a bad idea. We're just flying blind. So, PowerShell startups. Cloud ready, how have we done? Crazy. So get this, when we announced PowerShell Core, our launch partners were VMware, AWS, and Google. Let me say that again. Our launch partners were AWS, Google, and VMware. These are not traditional Microsoft partners. Okay? And in fact, from the very earliest days of PowerShell, the strongest partner. And at some point, again, not an natural fit. And I reached out to them. I said, well, why is there such a strong community? Why are you guys so supportive of PowerShell? And they said, listen, we went to a community whose hair was on fire and they were drowning anyway. And then we gave them virtualization, which gave them 10x the number of instances they had. If we didn't get great at automation, they would die and our business would not grow. So we had to do that. I said, oh, yeah. So guess what? Why is AWS and Google doing the same thing? For exactly the same reason, right? There is a large community of Windows users out there, and they want to attract those users to their platform. So, great. And AWS is doing a fantastic job on PowerShell, largely because they got some of the best PowerShell people. Ex-Microsoft team members have gone there. They're great. Yeah, Kenneth, Anand Calvo, Shiva. I hate to say it, but they have some very good people. Yeah. We made major improvements to the web and REST commandlets. So we've had these, and they were fine, but they just got a ton better. I just want to call out the community on this. Really quite good. Made significant performance improvements. .NET Core, one of the key value propositions of .NET Core is not just that it's smaller, refactored, all that. They made dramatic speed improvements. So, startup times, string processing, etc. There's huge performance improvements. We now are in beta with something called AutoRest. That is this. As you know, the world's moving to REST APIs. Question: how do I use a REST API? Answer: that's answer number 2. Hey, we got to solve that problem. One answer is go write a bunch of documentation, and then, well, how would I find the documentation? Yeah, that's answer number 3. Swagger, right? Metadata. There are a couple approaches to it, but Swagger is the one that, and now it's called OpenAPI, and it is basically a formalized way to document your REST API. Here are all the methods. Here's the way you use it. Here's what it's going to return back to you. And from the Swagger specification, we've said, hey, if you write your REST API according to best practices, and you document your Swagger with these fields, then we have a tool called AutoRest. We will point to your REST API with your Swagger document, and we will generate an SDK for .NET, Python, Ruby, Go, and now PowerShell, right? So what happened there was we kept saying, hey, why don't you guys do PowerShell? And they're like, no, we're busy. Java. There's a bunch of languages. Our Java sucks and our Ruby sucks, and that's what we're going to focus on. Yeah, but why not do PowerShell? We're like, no, we're all our ears on fire in Java. It's like, okay, fine, we'll do our own. We'll go build our own thing. And so we're building one, spent a year on this thing. It's pretty darn good. And they said, hey, you know what? We finished our Java and Ruby work. We're now going to do the PowerShell one. It's like, oh, it's so brutal. And so we ended up killing our own internal project, which is really good. The poor guy worked at it for a year, but in the end it was going to be a different code base. And so now it is one code base. Any changes, any improvements that they do, if they update the Swagger spec, everything aligns to it. So that's why you get consistent APIs across things. And again, that's a relatively recent tool. That's why you'll see new REST APIs get uniform support across everything. Some of the older ones, you'll see, oh, I got this, but I don't have that because there's a bunch of hand tuning. And we're in the process of trying to clean that up, but that's what's going on there. Progress is not always clean, right? Bunch of great proof points for being cloud ready. Number 1 is Azure Cloud Shell. Anybody use Cloud Shell? Okay, if you haven't used Cloud Shell, here's what Cloud Shell is. You go to the Azure portal. Go to the Azure portal. Happy days. See that thing? That look familiar? This brings up a console window in the browser. Okay. Notice it's PowerShell. You get a PowerShell or Bash. It takes a while to start. But then when it does, it is creating a container with PowerShell, and it has preloaded all the interesting tools. Okay, so we have all the AZ commandlets. There's Terraform. There's SQL. there's Emacs, there's Vim. Basically, it's the latest, greatest version of all the tools that are right here. We also have the Azure Drive. Right? So let's say get VX Drive. Okay, notice I have. Notice you don't see the C or D drive. Anybody know why that is? It's Linux. No, it's Linux. Okay. So originally, when we did this, we said, "Hey, PowerShell will be on Windows, Azure or Bash will be on Linux." And I looked at that and said, "I'm not sure that makes sense." So number one, the key thing about this environment is you're not managing this environment. You're using this environment to gain access to tools to manage your Azure environment. And what we found was, hey, we said still some people will like Windows, but then we found, okay, so there's Terraform over here in Linux. Let's get Terraform on Windows. Oh wait, it's not up to date. It's down low. And oh wait, so then VI is here, and then I got Vim here, and it was a mismatch of tools. I was like, wait, that's a mess. And so we made the bet. And we said, hey, we think because of this fact that this is about an environment to manage remote systems, we can consolidate on a single OS instance and put all the tools together. So from here, I can run Bash. Right? From Bash, I can run PowerShell. Exit, back to Bash, exit, back to PowerShell. Okay, so here we also created this Azure Drive. So we do a dir. Look at that, there's all my subscriptions. Change directory into one of the subscriptions. Do a dir. And from here you can do things like, from here, these virtual machines, you can say get virtual machine, pipe to enter Azure virtual machine, create a connection to that machine, get a PowerShell session on that system. You can start things, stop things. So manage the entire environment from here. I should have done that, but it's going to take a while. Anyway, so this is Azure PowerShell. Well, it's .NET, yeah. It's a managed environment by definition, yeah. So basically, what it gets to the heart of the PowerShell. So, okay, so in Bash, right, the Unix model, Bash is this little tiny thing. And when you type A, pipe to B, pipe to C, what happens is A runs as a process, B runs as a process, C runs as a process, and you line these things up. Okay? If you tried to do this in Windows, in case you're not up on current events, start the process. Very slow. And so the design said, so if we did this, so kind of great question. This is a great way to do things. However, you can't share things across processes. And what that means is you could never write a GUI on top of this. In fact, IBM tried to do it. They did it. It was called SMIT. It was horrible. This horrible, big, clunky thing. And so what we do is instead, PowerShell, it's just a different design center. PowerShell is big. And when you type A, pipe to B, pipe to C, that translates to .NET classes. By and large, .NET classes, we transfer control, they pipe things, and then it goes to the console. Okay? So basically, it's like motorcycles, right? There are two types of motorcycles. Motorcycles that go really fast on the straightaways and go not so good on the corners, and motorcycles that go really well on the corners and not so fast on the straightaways. It's exactly the same thing. They are very, very fast at startup, but then when you do lots of things, not as fast. We're slower at startup, but then when you do lots of things. Like, the entire Exchange GUI for over a decade has been layered on top of PowerShell. The entire GUI is layered on top of PowerShell. Anyways, there were other benefits to this design or that design, but that's the heart of it. Starting this takes a lot longer.
And to that, this is how Jeffrey explained directed acyclic graphs.
Say again?
This is how you explain directed acyclic graphs about motorcycle analogies.
Exactly, directed acyclic graphs. Exactly, that's right. Yeah, so if you're not up to details on PowerShell, in fact, it's not true. would encode it this way, but it's a directed graph. We can allow cycles. And the idea was that the problem is that we do not have a syntax for expressing cycles. In fact, we didn't have the whole idea is that in this, you see it, you get it. That's not the case in PowerShell. In PowerShell, you have the syntax, and underneath the covers, what we do is we create this very complex directed graph of an object flow graph. And in fact, it can be very complex with lots of forking and, in fact, cycles. What we want to do is to say, hey, if and when we figure out the syntax here, we can set up monitoring cycles, monitoring loops. We're monitoring. It says, hey, I want to measure this every 20 seconds. Get event, do some math, perform an action, do it again, and wait 5 seconds, iterate. And here's 20 of those, run them all concurrently. Yeah, but we didn't have a good way to express the syntax. I found out over time I figured out how to express a tree syntax really well, but we haven't got that in the language yet. Yeah. I won't go there. We'll have time for Q&A if you want. Okay, so we are very, very busy now working on Azure Functions. In fact, a big portion of the team. Has anybody ever used PowerShell and Azure Functions? Anybody like PowerShell and Azure Functions? Oh, okay, one. Half. Yeah, half. Like, yay, if only. It's like someone said, we wanted to use this, but it's clearly written by somebody that doesn't know anything about PowerShell. And that's right. It was written by somebody that didn't know anything about PowerShell. And so now the PowerShell team, because this is very important technology, the PowerShell team is doing that work in coordination with them. And that will, is it public preview? No, private preview. Are you using private preview? Oh, so when you liked it, did you like the version 1 or the
Version 2 is great.
Yeah,
But I'm not supposed to talk about it.
yeah, no, I'm talking about Here's the Men in Black moment. last minute is then erased. That works on tape too, right? And anyway, Azure Functions, it's a big investment. It's going to be awesome. And Azure Pipelines and App Layer CI. So what you see is we're spending, I mentioned to you that we're doing a lot of work on our engineering system. A bunch of our other cycles is in getting PowerShell to be ubiquitous so that it's available in all the places that you want to use it. And, sorry, let me say it differently. And done correctly. Here's the reality, right? There's a lot of stuff going on, and everybody's hair's on fire. So, great team, the functions team, but their hair's on fire. They're not going to take the time to stop and say, oh, let me just fully understand how to use this tool with the right semantics. And therefore, they could have gotten it right, turned out they didn't. So we are picking the ones that we think are going to be the most important, the most strategic, investing ahead of conventional wisdom, making sure that the integrations to these tool chains are really, really done well. Community, how have we done? Okay, so we got an open source repository. For quite some time now, just over 50% of the pull requests for that are coming from the community. I gotta tell you, we love this. Again, not all of them. Some of them are quite large. A lot of them are small fixes. We love small fixes. We really, really do. So it's just great. We got about 5 or 10 members that are very heavy contributors, both with the pull requests and with the issues. We got about this is a little bit old, but I don't know what the current number is. It's about a month old. But in the last 30 days, we had 87 external contributors open up a PR to the repository. So that's a pretty good number. We have, now this is not just, let's phrase this. PowerShell is no longer a Microsoft project. It is a community project of which Microsoft is a big member of the community. So what's the difference? And this is the difference, right? This would be if the people, so basically when you do a pull request, you say, hey, I don't like that code, I think the code ought to work this way, or I think it ought to be designed this way. And you go to the change. And if all those requests go to Microsoft, and then Microsoft employees say yes or no, in reality, it's open source, but it's a Microsoft project. And we're very concerned about not wanting to go down that path. And so we have people who are not Microsoft employees that can take that PR request and say, yep, it's in. Okay? So it is not controlled by Microsoft. Okay? Now, in order to be a repo maintainer, you have to have a high bar. Like, this stuff's going in Windows, so it's got to be, people have to know the code base, they have to have very high standards, but we have a number of them now. Here's 2 for PowerShell Script Analyzer, and here's 3 for Visual Studio Code. Oh, and then 4 for the desired state configuration resources. So it turns out a lot. And we're still working through our backlog of requests for comments. We're trying to, I'll just say that there are parts of the community engagement I think we're very happy with. Our participation, the way we show up. This is an area where we think we can do better. Honestly, just nobody knew how much time it was going to be. Like time you're not taking code and put it in the product to participate in the community. And so this is an area where we need to up our participation. Okay, this is the graph I showed you before. So, love to know where we can do better, right? And this is information we're looking from you. Are there platforms that we're missing in terms of ubiquity? What keeps you from adopting today? Cloud ready? Where do we need better performance? We're working with Azure PowerShell on asynchronous deployments. Community, we're trying to do a better job at recording things. Honestly, some of our community calls, they are, sorry I'm going to say this, so we've got the PowerShell committee. Right now, the PowerShell committee has just Microsoft people in it, although we're trying to bring in some external people who want to be fully open. And some of those conversations have had some internal Microsoft conversations. And so we know that we need to transcribe and make it public, and we're a little bit nervous about how to do that because some of that conversation is not for public consumption. So we'll figure it out. And love any feedback from you as to things we can be doing better. So, what comes next? PowerShell version 6.3? Nope. We believe, our current hypothesis is that we will not have a 6.3, that we will go to PowerShell version 7.0. This will be based upon .NET Core 3.0. We're in the process of getting builds out that use the code coded against that. .NET 3.0 is, once again, a substantial increase in available APIs. I know a lot of people say, hey, I love PowerShell Core, I love it on Windows, but man, I really miss OutGridView. I really miss OutGridView. Well, guess what? OutGridView is a GUI, and that GUI, that's not portable, so they didn't make it available. .NET Core, they're being explicit saying, hey, here's a set of libraries that are only going to be available on Windows, and so that's the case. But so then we'll have OutGridView on Windows. It will not be on Linux because Linux doesn't have WPF. But now PowerShell Core on Windows will have OutGridView and a number of the other things. This is Joey's bullet. I'm going to go with it, but I told him he was lying or sandbagging. So we believe that one of the issues with PowerShell Core is, hey, what is the compatibility with existing modules? So just because you get PowerShell Core there doesn't mean that all modules will work with it. They can, and many do, but then they also have to support it, right? And they have to declare it. And in fact, you can write your code in such a way that works in both environments. And so with .NET Core, some of those modules require code that was not available in .NET 2.0. We got a workaround for that called the Windows Command Compatibility Module. Crazy cool technology. I can show you that in a minute. But here, we believe that with .NET PowerShell 7 and .NET Core, over 90%. And again, I think Joey's sandbagging it. I think this is going to be well over 95%. And you're not going to, most people are not going to care about the 5% that don't work, really, if there is a 5%. Very bullish on this. At this point, we snap to the .NET support lifecycle. I got a slide on that. I don't really understand it. It's kind of incomprehensible. But here's the thing. One of the reasons that has kept us from shipping PowerShell Core in Windows, really there's been two things. First is we want to be able to move fast. And once you put it in Windows, man, because you ship to 1 billion people, the physics are different. And you gotta go slower, full stop. Because shipping to a bunch of people, shipping to just 10 million, whatever. But 1 billion, that's a different deal. Okay, so the physics change. And the second reason is the support life cycle for the underlying technology. .NET has a particular life cycle that they support things on, and we've got to line up with them, getting into Windows to line up with the Windows support cycle. Kind of like 3 different clocks that all need to line up. We intend to ship this in Windows. Again, we got to get an LTS version. That's the supported version of .NET Core. The problem is .NET Core 3.0 is guaranteed to not be LTS, so it's got to be a 3.1. So again, I say 3 clocks that all kind of got to line up. So that's why there's a intend to, want to, do all this. Likely it'll start as an optional feature. Actually, I hope it won't be an optional feature. We'll start. It will be an optional feature. There's 2 ways to ship an optional feature. Installed by default or not installed by default. If it's installed by default, you can remove it because it's an optional feature. If you don't install it by default, you can add it because it's an optional feature. What we want to do is we want to ship it in every Windows box on by default, and if that gives you any heartburn, you can remove it if you want to. And we're going to drop the core name, almost assuredly. This is PowerShell. This is the thing going forward. There's no qualifier, there's no caveat, there's no hedge. This is the deal. This is where we put all of our effort. So why 7.0 versus 6.3? PowerShell has never used semantic versioning. Maybe we should have, but the answer is we don't. Our major versioning is really a marketing term, and so this conveys a big change, conveys a signal, removing the core name, going to 7.0. This is the, hey everybody, if you were on the sidelines kind of evaluating it, we believe it's time to get off the sidelines and adopt this, both as partners, the entire ecosystem, get on this. This is that hideous .NET support, core support lifecycle. I don't understand. My brain just gets fuzzy when I hear this stuff, so that's why we hire PMs to figure it out. But that's that is. So, what about Windows PowerShell? Windows PowerShell, we have no plans for major feature work. We do, however, continue to make changes for accessibility. There's some legal requirements around that and some moral requirements. But at some point, Microsoft was the undisputed leader in the world at being accessible, delivering accessible software. And at some point, I'll just say, I'm not sure how or when it happened, but we lost our way. And we're going to fix that. We have fixed it. We'll continue to fix it. It is both required by law, and it's the morally right thing to do. It flows from our core mission, that is to empower every person and organization on the planet to do more. And so when we let our commitment to accessibility lapse, we really let ourselves down and let our community down. And we apologize for that. We do think that was propaganda. User voice, if you're using that, we want issues to, if the issues are relevant to core, we want them to go on GitHub. And this user voice is probably going to go read-only in the future. And then ISE, we're not investing in ISE, we're investing in Visual Studio Code. So ISE is great, happy days. It does not work with core, and it will continue to work as is sort of forever. Now, a lot of people freak out when you say that. I never understood that. Like, let's be clear about something. Anybody use command.exe? Okay, here's the deal. Command.exe has had virtually no changes for the last 20 years, and people use it just fine. And guess what? PowerShell version 1 was about 10 times greater and infinitely more extensible than command.exe. And since then, we've invested well over $100 million, well over $100 million in version 2, 3, 4, and 5, making this thing even more capable, even more extensible. And so anybody who's like saying, "Oh, command.exe, awesome," "Oh, PowerShell, you're abandoning it," they're just confused. I'm absolutely confident anything you want to do, you're going to be able to do with PowerShell version 5 for the next 20 years. Full stop.
Question. I
Yes.
saw a presentation you had given a video. You talked about the command com being around forever.
Yeah.
But you also said that you're changing the name of the PowerShell Core. It won't be PowerShell anymore, so you don't confuse it.
It won't be
You
Windows
just
PowerShell.
introduced it as PowerShell 7.0. So now you confused me.
Sorry, it won't be called PowerShell Core anymore.
But you said it won't be called PowerShell. It's going to be a different name. Was it PS? It was an abbreviation of something.
Oh, that's the executable name. So there's the product name,
Okay.
and then there's the executable name. So let's be
That's
clear.
why I got confused.
Yeah, PowerShell is the technology and the product. PowerShell proper is this big thing here. Sorry, you didn't get a good view of this. This big thing here is a DLL, right? Blah 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 .dll. That DLL can get hosted in lots of different executables. Okay, and when it's hosted for remoting, it's hosted in a WMI worker process. When it's PowerShell ISE, it's hosted there. When it's the command line interface, it's PowerShell.exe. Okay, so then we got PowerShell Core DLL. And what we said was, we're not 100% compatible. There are some breaking things. And so if we just use PowerShell.exe for that name, some people are going to try it, and they're going to try their favorite thing, and it's not going to work, and they're going to say, "What did you do to me?" And literally we can break operations if we just plug that in there. So what we said was, hey, this is not the best of all worlds, but we're going to give it a different executable name so that there's unambiguous, like, you know which one you want. You pick which one you want, you get it. But when you pick this one, realize that it's not fully compatible.
Let's
So,
do it.
yeah,
I
so if you
got
got,
is we're going to call it something different
Yeah.
to make sure we separate the two. We are, but on the executable point,
Yes.
not on the other point.
not the marketing. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. That's great. I should have articulated that one. Okay, so our call to action. I encourage you to install the latest release. Let us know what you like. Fill out issues in GitHub. Talk to us. Tell us how you're using it. If you're not using it, why not? What holds you back? The answer is, hey, you want a grid view? You got you covered. No big deal. Join our community call. There's a friendly name for that. And if you haven't, check out our contribution guide. Really do encourage everybody to do a PR. Like some of these PRs are pretty simple stuff. Again, you all know we have crappy error messages. Just find one of those, do it, and what you'll find is, having done it once, like, oh, that was easy. It's easy to do again and again. And then you might try, hey, maybe I try a little code. You don't have to, again, start off with a big monster thing. And we're rooting for your success. So don't think that there's this group of like stern people. You are not worthy. Get your code. That's not it. We're out there trying to make you successful, to bring you into the fold. So we'll be very helpful. And we've got a number of other open source projects in this sphere. There's this whole dynamic sphere around this. Check some of those out. We've got an RFC place, Visual Studio Code extensions, PowerShell Script Analyzer. There'll be some more ones. There's been some drama on Twitter about, unfortunately, we had made this unfortunate timing of events. I announced my new role, and then Bruce announced that he was leaving Microsoft at the same time. People were like, what's going on? Sorry, there's no drama here. There's no drama here. Bruce can tell his own story, but for me, basically, I continue to be involved in PowerShell, basically the same involvement as before. I left focusing in on PowerShell itself. That was my only responsibility a long time ago. I started PowerShell in 2000. And again, I'm terrible with years, but it's probably been over 10 years where I became the chief architect for Windows Server and the management products. And that was an organization continued to be pretty heavily involved. For over a year now, we got reorganized into Azure Storage and Azure Stack, where that's been my primary focus. But again, I meet with the PowerShell team on a regular basis, help them work through these sort of tough directional problems. Like they drove the get Cloud Shell on Linux versus Windows, and Linux. So anyway, well, I've got a new role, but this new role is a little bit more distant from that, right? So before, after 19 years in the Windows Azure world, I decided I want a big challenge, and so now I'm the chief architect, the architect for the intelligence substrate. In Office 365, it's hosted, Exchange, SharePoint, OneNote, all that. All of the artifacts go into something we call a substrate. Okay, this substrate is a common store that provides great security, availability, auditability, durability. And so whether it's an email message or a contact or an appointment or a document, it all gets stored in there. Then the intelligence substrate is a layer on top of that to enable an AI ecosystem of tools and developers. So this is the mechanism whereby I can empower a group of data scientists to say, hey, I'd like to do some machine learning experiments over a set of code. Well, guess what? They don't get access to all your code. Because what did I say? You are not our product. You are our customer, not our product. So they don't get access to your code, right? They can only do experiments in a way that they are fully eyes off, okay? So they can never see your emails, they're never going to read your contacts, etc. And yet they need to be able to do machine learning against that. That's a really hard problem. And so we're building the infrastructure to make that available. We'll empower those data scientists. Then those data scientists will come up with a good idea for a feature. So then that feature, those machine learning libraries, will then be made available to the feature teams that will then make that feature available to you. And if you have not tried it, anybody use Outlook here? Yeah? Anybody use OA? Man, if you have not tried OA, oh my God. And I told Perry Clark, my boss, I said, I learned Outlook badly about 20 years ago and used it that way ever since. And so when I came over, I should be a better user of it. And so I started using OA. I get shocked. I used OA about 10 years ago and decided it was crap. At it again. Outlook Web Access. So if you have Office 365, just go to office.com. Office.com. It's phenomenally good. By the way, we should. This could be dangerous.
You must have a test account.
There you go.
Let's see.
You're going to get fired. When you bring this up, there's this little thing here that says the new Outlook. Click that and restart. That's a React.js framework, so it's much faster. It's really peppy, and there's all these really wonderful features in it. Anyway, a bunch of those features are all empowered by this intelligence substrate. So that's what my new gig is. And so basically, having done this for 19 years, it wasn't like waking up in the middle of the night scared of my job. When I came to Microsoft, somebody said, if you go a couple years and aren't scared of your job, time to move on. And so I thought, well, I have a big challenge. Honestly, now I'm waking up at 3 in the morning, like, what is this AI thing? And how am I going to do this? And I'm having a blast. So the heart of it is it's artificial intelligence, most important new technology that everybody's figuring out how to use and apply to Microsoft's most voluminous and most important asset, all the objects in Office 365. And so when I was, they made the job for me. They said, hey, would you like to do this? We couldn't turn it down. And the reality is, as I mentioned to you, Microsoft's about a $100 billion a year business, and we've got about 11 technical fellows. Guys like me need to be focused in on pretty big, bold bets, and this was one such thing. So that's why I made the change. There's no drama about PowerShell, blah, blah, blah. The fact that Chris announced his departure from Microsoft at the same time. Don't read anything behind that. The team's doing fine with their kicking ass. And if you want to, if there's any confusion about that, I encourage you to come. Well, I guess you can't buy tickets anymore. The PowerShell Summit later this month. It's going to be fantastic. There's still tickets to Europe.
There's a few, yeah, there's more tickets for Europe.
Yeah, there's still tickets to Europe.
Still mentioned that
So which
We got lots, yeah.